Now let's learn about Hlookup, which is the horizontal lookup. Sometimes the data look like this. It is not column driven, it is a row driven. You have ID, you have name, you have email. So ID 1 attached to the name John, that's his email. ID number 2 have that name and that's his email. Now let's say I need to put the ID number over here, and I want to be able to pull back his email address as simple as possible. Maybe we have here 10 columns, maybe we have hundreds of columns related to ID, name, and email, and he came back to me, he said my ID is 10, and you want to be able to pull back his email address. As I said, those kind of logics are being used a lot, like through the Microsoft Outlook and through all those data handling softwares and tools, but it's being used a lot and in a more complicated relationship, but they all go down to the same logic as we're doing here in the VLOOKUP and Hlookup. Now I have ID here. Let's say I want to use that to pull back the email address for that ID. I would use Hlookup, that's how it's written. Open parentheses, he said, what's your lookup value? Similar to VLOOKUP. I said I want to pull back whatever value in this cell, and comma, what is your table of arrays, or what is your data range? In this case we have these data ranges, comma, what is the index? So when I go to your ID 1, so you have the name and the email, what you want to pull, which row you want to pull. Before we were counting 1, 2, 3 columns, now we're counting 1, 2, 3 rows. Which row you want me to pull back the data for you from? In this case I want back the email, which is row 3 from the top, and comma, I'm saying false because I need exact match, whatever in that cell. Hit enter. He should give me back the email for John. Okay, we got back j.kim@bentalonuniversity.edu. That is the email address for the student John. Let's put number 2. Let's say we have another ID to look for. ID number 2, hit enter. He say that is related to this person. If you want to know the name as well right away, out of hundreds of data, let's say similar to this kind of data set, then same thing. I would pull up the horizontal lookup for this ID and for this data range, but I'm looking up for row number 2, which is the name, and I would say false, give me the exact match. Hit enter. He say that is Ted. You can of course make it more aesthetic, can write in here name and give it similar formatting and coloring as the others. You'll be good to go. Just using the ID, you can pull back the email and the name right away out of hundreds of data sets. Of course, VLOOKUP can be used to way more complicated applications, and you can use the if statement with the VLOOKUP, you can use the indexing with the VLOOKUP. There's too much into the VLOOKUP, but that's like the base structure on how to understand in our introductory course how to excel in Excel. That is the basic blocks for the VLOOKUP and Hlookup. This way you know what is the potential of those kind of functions and how you're going to use them and elevate in using those in the future.